Okay, hello, my name is Ian Patterson. I write for All About Jazz, which is an American webzine based in Philadelphia, but there are many writers all over the world. I live in the north of Ireland, so primarily I cover music in Ireland and throughout Europe. Before that I lived in Southeast Asia for a number of years, so I covered jazz throughout Asia, so I have a kind of a global outlook on the music, which I think is a healthy outlook. How did I get into music? I think it was when I was a child, and the first music I fell in love with was the theme music for children's television programs, which I think at that time were really quite special, quite beautiful. This is in the UK, Ireland I'm talking about, and in fact I still have a lot of these melodies running around my head, not daily but weekly for sure, really deeply embedded, and that was my first step into music really. And I also fell in love quite young with the music of Ennio Morricone, which is another universe in itself. So I've had lots of different musical influences. As a kid I liked rock music, I still do. So I like a little bit of everything. And I also write about opera music as well, which is another passion of mine. And I don't really like too much this genre thing. I like the idea of music being fluid and not limited by borders. And with All About Jazz I get to write about a lot of different types of music, improvised, experimental rock as well, so it's a good home for me. Well, you have to bear in mind that All About Jazz is voluntary, so we're all volunteers. Most of us have day jobs. I have a day job. My day job is I carry architectural aluminium on my shoulders, so I don't need to go to the gym. And then in the little free time that I have, which is usually early morning or late at night, that's when I write, listen to music and write. So it's really a labor of love, and I'm not sure that it would work if it was a paid job, because then the relationship with the music changes. And so the fact that I'm doing it because I want to do it, and the reward is the music itself, that's why I do it. If I was in a position where someone's paying me to review this CD or that CD, and then I think it changes completely. So I'm quite happy with the amateur status and the volunteer status. I wish I had more time to dedicate to it. That's the one thing I find a little bit difficult, is to juggle work and family life and writing. As I'm sure you know yourself, there's never enough hours in the day, and sometimes it can be quite tiring. But when I come to a great event like the European Jazz Conference and hear all this great Italian jazz music and talk to people who are passionate about music, it reminds me why I do this. That's a difficult question to answer, but I think it ticks two boxes at once. I enjoyed writing also from a very young age. I used to write stories when I was a very young child, and I like music as well, so it combines two passions really.
Okay, and are you also musicians?
No, I can't say I am, no. I studied piano when I was a child, but I didn't have the dedication really to continue with it. I've had a couple of stabs at classical guitar in my life, but again, I didn't have the dedication, so at least I have some idea about the work involved to become a proficient musician. I know the sacrifices involved to some degree, so I have enormous respect for musicians and how much work they put into their art, into their craft. Jazz has been a music that has been evolving from the very beginning. It has always evolved, not just in a linear way, but with different side branches of the music. And if you look at jazz at any point in history, you can find multiple styles or multiple schools of jazz. I remember I went to the North Sea Jazz Festival then in 1989, which was then in Den Haag, and so we're talking 30 years ago. And at that time you had Cab Calloway was still alive and in his 80s, and he was amazing. You had a stride piano player from back in the day. You had jazz fusion. You had Miles Davis with his sort of modern jazz funk. You had Straight Ahead. You had New Orleans brass bands. You had bebop bands. And at that one festival, you had the entire history of jazz up to that point. What you didn't have then so much was DJs, turntables, not so much electronic music, which of course now you find everywhere. So it's just a process of evolution. But you can find big bands, you can find hip hop, you can find New Orleans music at festivals today. It's an inclusive kind of a label. I happen to like nearly all of it, so I'm happy with this diversity. And as I've already mentioned, now you get turntables. You hardly ever see a gig now without laptops on stage and pedals. Everyone's using pedal effects, and so this is the contemporary music of today. All the technology that's available. And you also see it in the light shows as well, which are so much more sophisticated than even 20 years ago. So it's almost like this multi-arts, multimedia experience a lot of times. And the music's just going to keep continuing to evolve because you have more and more influences from different cultures, different musical languages coming together. It becomes more and more difficult to say not just what jazz is, but what any music is these days. But I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with that. The only thing that's important for me is the music interesting to me? Does it excite me? Does it have an emotional impact? What you call it doesn't really bother me too much. I'm definitely not jazz police.